I want an open marriage with your brother. This isn't negotiable. That was the text I got from my wife, Beth, all the way from LA. Can you believe the audacity? After 18 solid years of marriage, she sends me that. And she was pregnant with his baby, yet she still genuinely thought she'd win custody of our daughters. The only sound in the garage was the slow, steady drip of oil from under the truck. It was midnight in Millbrook. This was the only time the world ever quieted down enough to give a guy space to think. I was elbow deep in engine grease when my phone gave a little buzz on the workbench. It was Beth, my wife of 18 years. I want an open marriage. This is not negotiable. I stared at those 8 words for a long moment, my hands filthy as I wiped them on an old rag. The fluorescent light above flickered right over my head, making shadows dance on the concrete floor. 18 years, 2 beautiful daughters, a home we built ourselves. A whole contracting business I grew from nothing. Understood. I typed back, hitting send. But I really didn't understand anything at all yet. Not really. Beth was in Los Angeles, supposedly at another one of her corporate retreats. These trips had become way too frequent ever since she snagged that management position at Harl Industries, and they were the very reason she was missing our daughter's basketball games and family dinners. I walked through our house. My house, technically, because I built it with my own 2 hands, and my electrical business paid for every single board and nail. The silence felt different now, heavier, like something was pressing down on the air. Family photos lined the hallway, but now they looked like relics from somebody else's past. In every single one, Beth's smile seemed forced, a little bit fake. The girls were staying at my mom's place this week. Something about giving their mother space to find herself. Back then, I just figured it was another phase. Beth had been restless lately, always talking about missed opportunities and needing more from life. Now, I knew exactly what more she'd been wanting. I made a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, just looking out at the backyard. The swing set I built for Becca and Brittany when they were little was empty. The chain swayed gently in the night breeze. Everything in the yard looked the same, but I knew something crucial inside me had broken. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Beth. We need to talk when I get back. This is about growth, James. About being honest with ourselves. Growth. Honesty. All the corporate buzzwords she'd been throwing around for months suddenly clicked into sickening place. I realized, right there, that I had been married to a total stranger, and I was apparently the last dumbass on earth to figure it out. I spent the rest of the night locked in my office, systematically going through our joint accounts, credit card statements, and phone records. Call it paranoia, or call it just basic life diligence, but 18 years of marriage taught me that Beth never did anything halfway. If she wanted an open marriage, she'd already opened it without asking. The evidence was laid out for me in plain black and white. Hotel charges in cities where she claimed she was at conferences, restaurant bills for 2 when she was supposedly dining alone. And then there were the phone calls to a number I instantly recognized, my brother John's cell. My younger brother. The golden boy who never quite lived up to his potential. The charming leech who borrowed money and never paid it back, who'd crashed on our couch too many times to count, who always seemed to look at Beth a little too long at family gatherings. I leaned back in my chair. The pieces snapped into place like the final parts of a horrifying puzzle I'd been trying to solve for months. Beth's sudden interest in her appearance, the new expensive clothes, the gym membership, the way she started working late the same nights John was supposedly in town. The coffee on my desk had long gone cold, but I didn't care anymore. I was wide awake, more alert than I'd been in years. My phone showed dozens of text messages between Beth and John stretching back 6 months. Nothing overtly romantic, but the subtext was crystal clear to anyone who knew how to read between the lines. I can't wait to see you again. James doesn't understand me like you do. This just feels so right. I saved screenshots of every message. Then, I went into Beth's cloud backup and deleted the entire message thread. If she wanted to play a game, she was going to have to do it without a safety net. The sun was coming up by the time I finished my investigation. I showered, put on my work clothes, and headed straight to the shop. My crew would be arriving at 7 o'clock, and I had a full day of electrical work scheduled. But first, I had one quick stop to make. The Millbrook Diner was already buzzing with the breakfast crowd when I walked in. Small towns run on gossip and coffee, and both flowed freely here. I nodded to the familiar faces and took a seat at the counter. "Morning, James," said Rita, the waitress who'd been serving coffee there since before I was even born. "Up early, couldn't sleep," I told her. It was the absolute truth. "Coffee and wheat toast, please." She poured the coffee without even being asked. "Beth's still out of town." "Los Angeles," I said. "Business trip." Rita nodded, her eyes full of that small-town knowledge. "That corporate life keeps people busy. Your girl's doing okay. They're with Mom this week, giving Beth some space to focus on work." The conversation felt innocent enough on the surface, but I could see Rita tucking that little bit of information away. By noon, half the town would know that James Morrison's wife was traveling again, leaving him alone with his thoughts and his work. I finished my coffee and drove to Morrison Electric, the business I built from a one-man operation into a crew of 8. We specialized in commercial and residential electrical work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady and profitable, the kind of business that keeps a small town humming. Pitt, my foreman, was already there, going over the day's schedule. "Morning, boss." We've got the Hendersons' rewire job and that new construction project on Maple Street. Sounds good, I said. I'll take the Henderson job. You run the crew on Maple. Pitt looked surprised. You sure? That's a big job for one person. I need to keep busy today, I told him, making sure my voice was firm. Besides, Mrs. Henderson specifically requested me. That was true, actually. Eleanor Henderson was 83, and she didn't trust anyone under 60 to touch her electrical system. I'd been maintaining her house for 15 years, since the day I started the business. The Henderson job took the better part of the day, which was perfect. Physical labor, problem solving, the sheer satisfaction of fixing something that was genuinely broken. By the time I packed up, I felt more like myself than I had in months. I was loading my tools into the truck when my phone rang. Beth's name lit up the screen. Hello, I answered. James, we need to talk about my message last night. I know it was sudden, but when are you coming home? I cut her off. Tomorrow night. But listen, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. A lot of couples are exploring alternative arrangements these days. It's about honesty, and I'll pick you up at the airport. James, are you listening to me? This is important. I heard you loud and clear. Open marriage, growth, honesty. I understand completely. There was a long pause on her end. You sound angry. I'm not angry, B. I'm just processing. We can work through this together as a family. Family. The word tasted bitter, like spoiled milk. Sure. We'll talk when you get home. After she hung up, I sat right there in Mrs. Henderson's driveway for a long time, watching the sun set over Millbrook. This was my town, my life, my whole world. I built something solid here, a business, a reputation, a family. Now, it was time to figure out what was worth fighting to save and what needed to be utterly torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. I drove home through streets I'd known all my life. I passed houses where I'd done electrical work, the high school where I met Beth, and the church where we got married. Everything looked the same, but I was seeing it all with brand new eyes. The house felt even emptier than the night before. I made a sandwich and ate it standing at the kitchen counter. Then I went into my office and started making list after list. Assets, accounts, property, investments, everything Beth and I owned together, everything we had built as a team. If she wanted honesty, she was going to get a hell of a lot more than she bargained for. Beth's flight landed at 7:30 on Tuesday evening. I was waiting at baggage claim, watching her walk towards me with that confident, corporate stride she'd picked up. She looked really good, actually, better than she had in years. New haircut, expensive clothes, that polished, I have something to prove look. Hi, she said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek, like we were mere acquaintances. How was Los Angeles? Productive. Very productive. She grabbed her suitcase from the carousel. James, about what we discussed. Let's talk at home. The girls are waiting for you. The drive back to Millbrook was agonizingly awkward. Beth kept trying to start conversations about her trip, her work, her future plans, but it all sounded rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said as we pulled into our driveway. About us, about what we want from life. We're both young enough to explore new possibilities. 42 isn't exactly young, Beth. That's exactly what I mean. We can't waste any more time pretending to be something we're not. I parked the truck and looked at her. What are we pretending to be exactly? Happy, she said instantly, without any hesitation. When was the last time we were really happy together? It was a fair question, and I had no good answer. We had been drifting for years, just going through the motions of a marriage while slowly growing apart. But I had stupidly assumed that was just normal, the way long-term relationships evolve. The girls were waiting in the living room, homework spread across the coffee table. Becca, our 17-year-old, barely looked up from her textbook. Brittany, 15, threw herself into Beth's arms like she hadn't seen her in months. How was Grandma's? Beth asked. Boring, Becca said flatly. She made us watch old movies and eat vegetables. That builds character, I said, settling into my recliner. Your grandmother raised 5 kids without cable TV or video games. Different times, Beth said, and the tone she used suggested she wasn't just talking about television. We went through the routine, family dinner, homework help, tucking Brittany in with a story. She still liked them, even though she claimed to be too old. It was normal family stuff, except nothing felt normal anymore. After the girls were in bed, Beth poured herself a glass of wine and sat across from me at the kitchen table. So, she said, taking a breath. Let's talk. I'm listening. I know this is hard to hear, but I've been thinking about this for a long time. We've grown apart, James. We want different things. What do you want? She took a sip of wine, visibly gathering her thoughts. I want to feel alive again. I want passion, excitement, the feeling that anything is possible. I want to be with someone who sees me as more than just a wife and mother. Someone like John. The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. What? My brother, John. The someone who sees you as more than just a wife and mother. Beth's face instantly went pale, then flushed a deep red. I don't know what you're insinuating. I'm not insinuating anything, Beth. I'm stating facts. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the screenshots I had saved. A hotel bill from Chicago. 2 guests, 1 room. The exact weekend she was supposedly at a marketing conference. She looked at the screen, then back at me, terrified. You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. James, I can explain. Can you? Because I have about 6 months worth of evidence that suggests you and my brother have been having an affair. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. Should I keep going? Beth set her wine glass down with hands that were visibly trembling. It's not what you think. Really? What is it then? It's complicated. Complicated. I laughed, but there was zero humor in it. You're sleeping with my brother, and you're calling it complicated. We didn't plan for this to happen. It just developed naturally. How long, Beth? How long have you been sleeping with my brother? She flinched at the harsh tone of my voice. 6 months, maybe 7. And you thought the best way to handle this was to ask me for an open marriage? I thought we could come to an arrangement as adults. Adults. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at our backyard. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back for 7 months. Adults absolutely do not have affairs with their husband's brother. I know how this looks. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been planning this entire thing for a while. The corporate job, the business trips, the sudden interest in personal growth. You've been building an exit strategy. Beth was openly crying now, but I felt nothing, zero sympathy. I never wanted it to happen this way, but it did. And now you want me to just accept it? To smile and pretend everything's fine while you carry on your relationship with John? I want us to be honest with each other for the first time in years. I turned back to face her. Fine, let's be honest. I know about the affair. I know about the hotel rooms and the secret phone calls and the lies you've been telling our daughters. I know he's been coming over when I'm at work, and I know you've been using our joint credit card to pay for your romantic getaways. James, please. I'm not finished. I also know you've been telling people we're having marital problems. Rita at the diner, your sister, probably half the women in your book club. You've been setting the stage for this conversation for months. Beth dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth. Every single bit of it. She took a shaky breath. I love him. You love John? My brother John? The one who's been unemployed for 3 years? The one who borrowed $5,000 from us last Christmas and never paid it back? The one who's been sleeping in his car because he can't make rent? He's going through a tough time. He's a loser, B. A charming, manipulative loser who's been living off other people his whole pathetic life. Don't talk about him like that. I'll talk about him however I want. He's my brother, and I know exactly what he is. Beth jumped up, her composure totally shattered. You don't understand what it's like to be married to you. You're so predictable, so safe. John makes me feel things I haven't felt in years. What kind of things? Excitement, passion, like I'm 25 again. You are not 25, Beth. You are a 42-year-old mother of 2 with a mortgage and responsibilities. This is reality. That is exactly what I'm talking about. You see me as a collection of obligations. John sees me as a woman. I went back to the table and sat across from her. So what happens now? I don't know. I was hoping we could work it out together. Together? You mean the 3 of us? You, me, and John? I mean as mature adults who care about each other. I cared about you for 18 years, Beth. I built this house for you with my own sweat. I worked 60 hours a week to give you the life you wanted. I coached our daughters' softball teams, never missed a school play, and put your needs ahead of my own every single day. I know. And you repaid me by having an affair with my brother. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And now you want me to just accept it? To share you with John, as if we're all part of some enlightened, pathetic arrangement. Beth looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. I don't know what I want anymore. Well, I know exactly what I want, I said, my voice low and firm. I want you to pack a bag and get out of my house. Her head snapped up, shocked. James, you can't be serious. I am completely serious. You wanted honesty? Here it is. I don't want to be married to a woman who's been lying to me for 7 months. I don't want to share my wife with my brother. And I damn sure don't want my daughters thinking this is what a normal marriage looks like. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Stay with John. Get a hotel room. Figure it out, like the mature adult you claim to be. What about the girls? The girls will be fine. They'll stay here with me, in their home, keeping some semblance of stability while their mother figures out her midlife crisis. Beth was crying again, but this time it seemed genuine, not calculated. This isn't how I wanted things to be. How did you want them to be, Beth? What was your plan here? I thought maybe we could work something out. Something that involved me agreeing to your affair and pretending everything was fine? You really thought I might understand that? I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, needing physical distance between us. I understand completely. You got bored with your life, so you decided to utterly blow it up. You started an affair with my brother because he represents everything I'm not. Irresponsible, unpredictable, dangerous. And now you want me to just give you permission to continue. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. Beth wiped her eyes and stood up. I'll pack some things. Fine. I hope you can forgive me someday. I looked at her, really looked at her for what felt like the first time in years. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with back in high school, But she was also a complete stranger now. She was someone who had been living a whole double life while I was working to hold our family together. Maybe I will, I said, my voice flat. But not today. She went upstairs to pack, and I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to her moving around in our bedroom. 20 minutes later, she came down with a small suitcase and her laptop bag. I'll call the girls tomorrow, she said. They're going to have questions. I know. We'll figure out what to tell them. We'll tell them the truth. That their mother decided she wanted something different. Beth paused at the front door. This doesn't have to be the end, James. People get through these things. Some people do, I said, standing my ground. But those people don't have affairs with their husband's brother. After she left, I sat in the quiet house, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. 18 years of marriage, gone in one conversation. 2 daughters who would wake up tomorrow to find their mother absent. A brother who had betrayed me in the worst, most intimate way. But I wasn't angry yet. I was something else entirely. Focused, determined, and strangely clear-headed for the first time in months. She wanted honesty? She was going to get a heavy dose of reality. I spent the next hour making phone calls, sending emails, and changing every password we shared. By the time I finally went to bed, Beth no longer had access to our joint bank accounts, credit cards, or any of the financial resources she'd been using to fund her affair. If she wanted to start a new life with John, she could damn well do it on her own dime. The girls took the news about as well as could be expected. Becca, our 17-year-old, just nodded, like she'd been expecting this conversation her whole life. Brittany cried and asked if it was her fault, which just about broke my heart into pieces. This has nothing to do with you girls, I told them over breakfast. Your mother and I have some things to work out, but that doesn't change how much we both love you. Is she coming back? Brittany asked, her little voice cracking. I don't know, honey. We're taking things day by day. Becca just pushed her eggs around on her plate, uneaten. It's about Uncle John. I stared at her. What do you mean? I'm not stupid, Dad. I've seen the way they look at each other, and he's been coming over a lot when you're at work. What do you mean, coming over? How often? Hanging out, helping Mom with things, acting weird. Brittany looked confused, not getting it. What's wrong with Uncle John helping out? Becca shot her younger sister a look that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. Nothing, Britt. Forget it. After the girls left for school, I called my mom. James, is everything all right? Beth and I are having some problems, Mom. She's staying somewhere else for a while. There was a long, heavy pause. I see. And the girls are with me. They're handling it well, considering everything. Do you want to talk about it? My mother was 73 and had survived her own share of marital trouble. My father left when I was 12, and she raised 3 kids alone while working 2 jobs. If anyone would understand, it was her. Beth has been having an affair, I admitted. Another, longer pause this time. Oh, James. I'm not surprised, frankly. I wondered, the way she looked at him at Christmas dinner. The way he... Well, John has always been a troublemaker where women are concerned. Why didn't you say anything? What was I supposed to say? I think your wife is having an affair with your brother? You would have just thought I was a meddling old woman. I would have listened. Would you have, though? Or would you have defended her and stopped talking to me? She had a point. I had always been fiercely protective of Beth. I always gave her the benefit of the doubt, even when the evidence was right in front of my face. What are you going to do? Mom asked, her voice concerned. I don't know yet, but I'm not going to just roll over and let them destroy what I've built here. Be careful, son. Vengeance has a way of hurting the wrong people. After I hung up, I drove to the shop and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept racing back to Beth, the lies, the betrayal, and the 7 months they had been sneaking around behind my back. Pitt, my foreman, noticed my distraction around noon. Boss, you okay? You've been staring at that circuit breaker for 10 minutes straight. Just thinking about Beth. I looked at him. What do you know about Beth? Nothing specific, but Rita mentioned she's been traveling a lot, and that your brother's been seen around town more often. People talk. People talk. In a town like Millbrook, that was both a blessing and a curse. Nothing stayed secret for long, but rumors could spread faster than facts. What exactly are people saying? Pitt looked deeply uncomfortable. Maybe you should ask someone else. I'm asking you, Pitt. He sighed, giving up. Some folks think maybe Beth's gotten a little too big for her britches since she got that corporate job. Others think John's been peeing where he shouldn't. But mostly, people just feel bad for you. They feel bad for me? You're a good man, James. You've done right by this town. You've helped a lot of people. No one wants to see you get hurt like this. The sympathy was honestly worse than the gossip. I didn't want to be anyone's pity case. I was finishing a service call at the local bank when Candace Williams approached me. Candace was Beth's supposed best friend since high school. She was also one of the biggest gossips in town, which made her both a potentially valuable source of information and a dangerous enemy. James, I heard about you and Beth. I'm so sorry. News really does travel fast. Is there anything I can do? I know this must be hard. There was something in her tone, a slight eagerness, that made me instantly suspicious. Candace had never particularly liked me. She'd always thought Beth could do better. I immediately wondered how much she knew about the affair and how long she'd been keeping Beth's secrets. I'm managing just fine, I said. If you need someone to talk to, someone who knows Beth really well. Thanks, but I think I've heard enough about Beth for one day. Candace looked genuinely hurt. I'm just trying to help. Are you? I challenged her. Or are you digging for information to report back to Beth? That's not fair. No, it isn't fair. You've been her best friend for 25 years. You expect me to believe you didn't know about John? Candace's face turned beet red. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. I finished my work and left, but the conversation lingered with me. If Candace knew about the affair, and I was convinced she did, then Beth had been discussing the matter with other people, maybe even asking for advice on how to manage the situation. That evening, I was helping Brittany with her math homework when my phone rang. John's name flashed on the screen. Hello, John. James. We need to talk, man. Do we? This whole situation is a total mess, man. I never wanted things to get this far. How far did you want them to get? There was a noticeable pause. Can we meet somewhere face to face? Why? Because we're brothers? Because this family doesn't need to be torn apart over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I glanced at Brittany, who was definitely pretending to focus on her homework while listening to every single word. Hold on a second. I walked into the kitchen and closed the door. Okay, John. Explain the misunderstanding. Beth was lonely, man. You were always working, always focused on the business. She needed someone to talk to, so you talked her into sleeping with you. It wasn't like that. It just happened. We were both going through some tough stuff, and we connected. It wasn't planned. But it continued for 7 months. We tried to stop a few times, but there's something between us, James. Something real. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles were white. Something real? I know you're mad. I'm not mad, John. I'm utterly disappointed. I thought my brother was better than this. I am better than this. That's why I'm calling. That's why I want to make things right. How exactly do you propose to make things right? I don't know. Maybe we can work out an arrangement, like Beth suggested. People have unconventional arrangements all the time, James. Unconventional arrangements. I almost laughed out loud at the ridiculousness. You think I'm going to share my wife with you? I think you love Beth enough to want her to be happy. I did love Beth, past tense. But I don't love liars and cheaters. James, let me ask you something, John. Where are you calling from? What do you mean? Are you in Beth's hotel room right now? Are you lying in bed with my wife while you're asking me to be understanding about your affair? Silence. I thought so. You want to make things right? Stay away from my family. Stay away from my wife. Stay away from my daughters. And stay away from me. You don't mean that. I've never been more serious in my life. I slammed the phone down and stood in the kitchen, shaking with cold, hard rage. The unbelievable audacity of him calling me while he was with Beth, asking me to accept their relationship, suggesting we could all just be happy together. My phone buzzed with a text from John. I'm sorry it has to be this way. I deleted the message instantly without responding. Brittany appeared in the kitchen doorway. Dad, are you okay? I forced a tight smile. I'm fine, honey. Just business stuff. That was Uncle John. Yes. Is he coming for dinner this weekend? John had been a regular at our family dinners for years, showing up whenever he needed a free meal or wanted to borrow money. The girls absolutely adored him. They thought he was the fun uncle who brought them presents and told them jokes. Not this weekend, I said, making sure my voice was even. Uncle John is going to be busy for a while. That night, after the girls were safely in bed, I sat in my office and made more phone calls. I called our lawyer, our accountant, and our insurance agent. I needed to understand exactly what I was facing, what Beth was entitled to, and what my rights were. The financial picture that emerged wasn't pretty. 18 years of marriage meant Beth was legally entitled to half of everything we owned. The house, the business, our savings, our retirement accounts. She could absolutely claim spousal support, especially given her recent job history and the disparity in our incomes. But there were things that played in my favor. The affair was the big one. Indiana was not a no-fault divorce state, which meant that adultery could definitely impact the division of assets and support payments. The fact that she had been using marital assets to fund the affair was another major point for me. Most importantly, I had hard documentation, screenshots, credit card statements, hotel receipts, evidence that would be incredibly difficult for Beth to explain away. I was still doing research when my phone rang again. This time it was Beth. James, we need to talk about the girls. What about them? They need stability right now. They need both their parents. They have stability. They are in their home, with their father, maintaining their normal routines. They need their mother, too. Their mother is the one who chose to leave. I didn't choose to leave. You threw me out. I gave you a choice, Beth. End the affair or leave. You chose to leave. I needed time to think. You've had 7 months to think, Beth. How much more time do you need? This is complicated. It's not. It's simple. You are having an affair with my brother. You either end it and come home, or you stay out. But you cannot have both. The girls miss me. Then come home. Silence. I can't do that. Then you've made your decision. James, please. I have to go. The girls have school tomorrow, and I need to help them with their homework. Can I at least see them? Of course. You're their mother. But it will be on my terms, in my house. when it's convenient for our family. Your family? I'm part of this family too. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've started a new family with John. After she hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard where my daughters had grown up. The swing set, the garden bed I'd planted, the fire pit where we'd roasted marshmallows on summer nights. It all felt like ancient, lost history now. The news spread through Millbrook like a brush fire. By the end of the week, everyone knew that James Morrison's wife had left him for his own brother. The looks I got at the grocery store ranged from deep sympathy to morbid curiosity to outright pity. I absolutely hated every single one of them. Rita at the diner started giving me extra coffee and asking pointed, leading questions about how I was holding up. The guys at the hardware store offered unsolicited advice on divorce lawyers and asset division. Even the mailman felt compelled to share his opinion on women who don't appreciate what they have. The constant attention was suffocating, but it also gave me a tactical idea. If everyone was going to be talking about my business anyway, I might as well control the narrative. I started small. When Rita asked how I was doing, I mentioned that Beth had been distant for months, traveling constantly for work, leaving me to handle everything at home. When the guys at the hardware store offered advice, I quietly shared that I had discovered financial irregularities in our joint accounts. I never outright lied. I just emphasized certain truths while carefully omitting others. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Within days, the story had completely evolved from poor James was left by his wife to Beth Morrison was living a lavish double life while her devoted husband worked to support the family. Meanwhile, I was methodically documenting every single detail, every text message, every phone call, every piece of evidence that proved Beth's affair. I went ahead and hired a private investigator to follow them, to photograph them together, to create an undeniable, indisputable record of their relationship. The photos came by email on a Thursday morning. Beth and John walking into a hotel together, Beth and John having dinner at a fancy restaurant 40 miles out of town, Beth and John kissing passionately in the parking lot of a strip mall. Looking at those raw images should have hurt me more than it did. Instead, I felt a cold, focused satisfaction. Evidence. Proof. Ammunition for the war that was absolutely coming. Because, make no mistake, this was a war. Beth called that night while I was helping Becca with her college applications. I want to see the girls this weekend, she stated, skipping any preamble. Fine. Saturday afternoon, 2 to 6. I was thinking they could stay overnight. No. James, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You can see them here, in their home, for 4 hours. That's more than generous considering the circumstances. What circumstances? The affair, B. The lies. The fact that you abandoned your family for my brother. I didn't abandon anyone. Didn't you? When was the last time you went to Brittany's basketball game? When was the last time you helped Becca with her homework? You've been completely checked out of this family for months. I was working. You were having an affair. There was a long silence on the line. I want to bring John with me. Absolutely not. He's part of my life now. He's not part of their lives, and he never will be as long as I have anything to say about it. You can't keep me from my daughters. I'm not keeping you from them. I'm keeping my brother from corrupting them further. John loves those girls. John loves the idea of playing house with my wife and my children. There is a huge difference, Beth. You're being cruel. I'm being protective. There's a difference. Saturday afternoon arrived with an unseasonable warmth for October. Beth showed up alone, dressed in clothes I had never seen before. Expensive, stylish, the kind of outfit that hinted she was doing just fine, despite being cut off from our joint accounts. The girls were excited to see her, especially Brittany, who threw herself into Beth's arms like she had been gone for months instead of just a week. I missed you so much, Mom. I missed you too, honey. Becca, always more reserved, hung back and watched the reunion with careful, scrutinizing eyes. She had inherited my suspicious nature, my tendency to observe before acting. How are you girls? Beth asked brightly. Are you taking care of your dad? Dad's taking care of us, Becca said. He's been cooking dinner every night and helping with homework and taking us to practice. That's wonderful, Beth replied. Your father has always been good at taking care of people. There was a subtle condescension in her tone that irritated me, a suggestion that I was merely adequate, a caretaker instead of a father. We're getting by just fine. I cut in. The girls are resilient. Beth looked around the living room, taking in the family photos, the girls' school projects on the refrigerator, the total ordinariness of our daily life. This feels strange, she admitted. Being a visitor in my own home. It's not your home anymore, Becca said quietly. Beth looked completely stunned. Becca, you left, Mom. You chose to leave. It's complicated, honey. No, it's not, Becca insisted. Dad explained everything. You're with Uncle John now. Beth shot me a furious, venomous look. What exactly did you tell them? The truth, Beth. That you're having an affair with my brother. In front of the girls? They're not children, Beth. They're 17 and 15. They're old enough to understand what's happening to their family. Brittany looked confused. What's an affair? Becca sighed dramatically. It means Mom has a boyfriend, but Dad's her boyfriend. Dad's her husband. Or was. It's different. I watched Beth desperately struggle to explain herself to our daughters. I watched her try to justify the unjustifiable. She talked about growing apart and finding happiness in adult relationships, but the girls weren't buying any of it. "So you're getting divorced?" Brittany asked with a sniffle. "We're working things out," Beth replied weakly. "Are you going to marry Uncle John?" Becca asked, cutting straight to the point. "I don't know what's going to happen, but..." "Do you love him more than Dad?" "It's not about loving someone more." "It is," Becca interrupted, her voice firm. "You chose him over us." "I didn't choose him over you. I would never choose anyone over you girls." "But you did," Brittany said, tears starting to flow. "You left us for Uncle John." Beth looked at me, completely helpless. "James, help me out here." "Help you what, Beth?" "Explain to our daughters why their mother abandoned them for their uncle. I think you're on your own with that one." The visit spiraled downward from there. Beth tried to engage the girls in normal conversation, school, friends, activities, but it all felt forced and artificial. The easy rapport she once had with them was completely gone, replaced by awkwardness and deep hurt feelings. When 6 p.m. finally rolled around, both girls hugged their mother goodbye, but the hugs were brief and just for show. "When will I see them again?" Beth asked. "Next weekend," I said. "Same time, same conditions." "This isn't sustainable, James. The girls need more than 4 hours a week with their mother. The girls need their mother to start making better choices." After Beth left, I found Becca in her room, staring blankly at her phone. "You okay, honey?" "I'm fine." "You don't seem fine, Becca." She looked up at me, her eyes tired. "Why did she do it, Dad? Why did she choose Uncle John over us?" It was the same question I'd been agonizing over for weeks. "I don't know, Becca. Sometimes people make choices that just don't make any sense to the rest of us." "Do you think she'll come back?" "I don't know that either." "Do you want her to?" I sat on the edge of her bed, carefully considering the question. 2 weeks ago, I would have answered yes without hesitation. Now, after seeing how easily she walked away from our family, after watching her struggle to connect with her own daughters, I wasn't so sure I did. "I want what's best for you and your sister," I said finally. "Everything else is secondary to that." "That's not an answer." "It's the only honest answer I have right now." That night, after the girls were in bed, I sat in my office and went over the latest report from the private investigator. Beth and John were living together in a rented apartment across town, splitting expenses, playing house like a couple of irresponsible teenagers. They were going out to dinner, going to movies, acting like a normal couple, except for the small, crucial detail that Beth was still legally married to someone else. The investigator had also uncovered something even more interesting. John had applied for several jobs in other cities, Chicago, Indianapolis, even Nashville. He was planning to leave Millbrook, and presumably, he wanted Beth to go with him. That detail changed absolutely everything. If Beth left town, custody arrangements would become much more complicated and painful. The girls would be forced to choose between staying in their hometown with their father or following their mother to a new city where they knew no one. I knew I couldn't possibly let that happen. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "Tom, it's James Morrison. I need to file for divorce, and I need to do it quickly." The divorce papers were officially served on a Monday morning at Beth's new apartment. I wasn't there to witness her reaction, but John called me within an hour, shouting about harassment and legal intimidation. "You can't do this, James. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're mad." "I'm not destroying anything," I said calmly, my voice ice cold. "I'm protecting my interests and the interests of my daughters." "Beth is devastated." "Beth should have thought of that before she slept with my brother." "We're in love." "You're in lust." "There's a difference, John. You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I also know that you've been applying for jobs in other cities, planning to take my wife, and maybe my daughters, away from everything they've ever known." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "That's right, John. I know about Chicago, Indianapolis, Nashville. You really thought you could just sneak out of town without me finding out?" "We haven't made any decisions." "You've made a lot of decisions. You decided to have an affair with my wife. You decided to break up my family. You decided to plan a future that doesn't include me or my daughter's stability. The girls could come with us." "Over my dead body." I hung up before he could respond. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly once it began. My lawyer, Tom Bradley, had been handling family law in Millbrook for 30 years. He had seen every kind of divorce, every custody battle, every financial dispute imaginable. "You've got a very solid case," he told me during our second meeting. "The affair is well documented. She used marital assets to fund the relationship, and she abandoned the family home. Any reasonable judge is going to see this for exactly what it is." "What about custody?" "With her current living situation and the instability she's created, I think we can get primary custody with supervised visitation, especially if she's planning to leave the state." "And financially?" "She'll get something. It's an 18-year marriage, after all. But given the circumstances, it won't be half of everything. Maybe 30%, possibly less." That was better than I had dared to hope for. The real battle started when Beth hired her own lawyer, a sharp, aggressive woman from Indianapolis who specialized in representing wives in high-asset divorces. Suddenly, Beth was claiming that I had been emotionally abusive, that I had controlled the finances, and that I had pushed her into John's arms through years of neglect. It was a predictable legal strategy, but it still hurt deeply to see our marriage completely rewritten as a fictional story of oppression and escape. The girls were caught squarely in the middle, forced to answer probing questions about their home life, their relationships with both parents, and their preferences for custody arrangements. Becca handled it with typical teenage stoicism, but Brittany struggled terribly with the pressure. "I don't want to choose," she told me one night after a particularly difficult session with the court-appointed counselor. "Why can't things just go back to the way they were?" "Because your mother made choices that can't be undone, sweetheart," I said gently. "But no matter what happens, you and Becca are going to be okay. I promise you." "What if the judge says we have to live with Mom and Uncle John?" "That's not going to happen." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let it." It was a solemn promise I fully intended to keep, no matter the cost to me. The breakthrough, the real turning point, came from a completely unexpected source. Candace Williams, Beth's supposed best friend, called me on a Thursday night in November. "James, it's Candace. I need to talk to you about something important." "About what?" "About Beth. About what's really been going on." We met at a coffee shop in the next town over, somewhere anonymous where no one who knew us would see us. Candace looked incredibly nervous, fiddling with her purse and avoiding eye contact. "This is hard for me," she whispered. "Beth has been my friend for 25 years, but I can't watch her destroy those girls' lives over a man like John." "What do you mean?" Candace took a deep, shaky breath. "Beth didn't just fall into this affair, James. She planned it. She's been unhappy for years, talking about leaving you, talking about wanting a different life. When John started coming around more often, she saw a clear opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" "To create a crisis that would force you to act. She thought if she had an affair, you would fight for her. Maybe you would change, become more exciting." "That's insane." "That's Beth. She's always been dramatic, always needed to be the center of attention. But when you didn't react the way she expected, when you just accepted it and asked her to leave, she panicked. So she doubled down." "Exactly. And now she's in too deep to back out. She's told everyone you were a terrible husband, that John is her soulmate, that she's finally found true happiness. She can't admit it was all a huge mistake without looking like a fool." "What about John?" Candace laughed, a short, bitter sound. "John is an opportunist. He saw a chance to live rent-free with a woman who has a steady income, and he took it. But he's already getting restless. I've seen him out with other women, James. He is not as committed to this relationship as Beth thinks he is." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because those girls deserve better than this mess. Because you deserve better. And because Beth is about to make a mistake that will ruin all of your lives." "What kind of mistake?" "She's pregnant." The word slammed into me like a physical blow. "What?" "She's 10 weeks along. She hasn't told John yet. She hasn't told anyone but me. She's planning to use the pregnancy to force John to marry her, to prove to everyone that their relationship is real and lasting." I stared at Candace, my mind spinning, trying to process this devastating information. "Are you sure?" "I went to the doctor with her. I've seen the ultrasound. It's John's." "She says it is. The timing matches. A baby." Beth was having John's baby, which would complicate everything. Custody, support, the girls' relationship with their mother. It would tie her to John permanently, creating a new family that pointedly excluded me and my daughters. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked again, needing to understand her motive. "Because I think you have a right to know the truth. And because I think Beth is making a terrible mistake that is going to hurt everyone, including this innocent baby." "What do you want me to do with this information?" "I don't know, James, but I thought you should have all the facts before the custody hearing next month." After Candace left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking through every single implication. Beth's pregnancy changed everything, but it also gave me leverage I hadn't had before. If she was planning to use the baby to manipulate John into marriage, she was far more desperate than I had realized, and desperate people always made mistakes. I called Tom Bradley and scheduled an emergency meeting for the very next morning. "This complicates things," he said after I explained the situation to him. "But it could also work heavily in our favor." "How?" "A pregnant woman living with her lover in an unstable relationship is not exactly the picture of maternal fitness, especially when that lover is the father's brother and a known layabout. What do you recommend we do?" "We push for an immediate resolution of the custody issue. We argue that the girls need stability and that Beth's current situation is anything but stable. We emphasize that she abandoned the family home to pursue an affair and is now pregnant with her lover's child. And if she claims the baby isn't John's, then we demand a paternity test. Either way, it proves she was having unprotected relations with someone who was not her husband while she was still married. It was brutal, ruthless, but it was also absolutely necessary. Beth had chosen this destructive path, and now she would have to live with the consequences." The custody hearing was scheduled for the first week of December. As the date approached, I found myself strangely calm, laser-focused on the task at hand. I documented everything, prepared for every possible argument, and anticipated every move Beth's high-powered lawyer might make. The night before the hearing, I was sitting in my office, going over my testimony one last time. Becca knocked softly on the door. Dad, can I talk to you? Sure, honey. What's on your mind? Tomorrow's the big day, right? The custody thing. That's right. Are you nervous? A little, but I'm confident we'll get the right outcome. She sat in the chair across from my desk, looking much older than her 17 years. I want to testify, Dad. I know you don't want me to get involved, but I want to tell the judge what it's really been like. How Mom left. How Uncle John wrecked our family. How you've been taking care of everything. You don't have to do that, Becca. Yes, I do. This is my family, too, and I want to fight for it. Looking at my daughter in that moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of pride and gratitude. She was strong, determined, and willing to stand up for what was right, even though it was the hardest thing she'd ever had to do. Okay, I said, my voice thick with emotion. If that's what you want, we'll make it happen. And Dad, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know you've been a great father. Better than great. You've been everything we needed. Thanks, honey. That means more to me than you know. The next morning, I got up early and made a big breakfast for the girls. I helped them get ready for school and kissed them goodbye, just like it was any other day. Then I put on my best suit, grabbed my briefcase full of damning evidence, and drove to the courthouse. It was time to finish the disaster Beth had started. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with that harsh fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look pale and tired. Beth sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, wearing a conservative blue dress I'd never seen before. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring, the ring she was still wearing, despite everything. John was, thankfully, not there, which made sense. His presence would only hurt Beth's case. The judge, Margaret Harrison, was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes that suggested she'd heard every sad story and flimsy excuse in the world. She reviewed the case file, while both lawyers made their opening statements. Beth's lawyer painted a picture of an oppressed wife who had finally found the courage to leave an emotionally distant, controlling husband. She talked about my controlling behavior and financial manipulation, my tendency to prioritize work over family, and my refusal to acknowledge Beth's needs as an individual. It was a compelling narrative, and if I hadn't actually lived the facts, I might have even been convinced. Tom Bradley's opening was much more direct. Beth had abandoned her family to pursue an affair with her husband's brother, using marital assets to fund the relationship while neglecting her responsibilities as a mother. She was now pregnant with her lover's child and planning to leave the state, which would further destabilize the girls' already damaged lives. Your Honor, he concluded, his voice unwavering. This case is not about a marriage that grew apart over time. It is about a woman who chose selfish desires over her children's well-being, and a father who has been left to painstakingly pick up the pieces. The first witness was Beth herself. She took the stand confidently, speaking clearly about her journey of self-discovery and her realization that she deserved happiness. I never wanted things to happen the way they did, she claimed. But sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and you simply have to follow your heart. And your heart led you to your husband's brother? Tom asked during cross-examination. John and I connect on a level that James and I never did. We understand each other. You understand each other well enough to be planning a move to Chicago? Beth's composure finally cracked slightly. We've discussed various possibilities for the future, including taking the girls away from their father and their hometown. The girls would benefit from new experiences. Would they benefit from being separated from their father? That's not what we're planning. But it's a possibility? If you move to Chicago with Mr. Morrison, I suppose it's a possibility. I suppose it is. Tom presented the hotel receipts, credit card statements, and the photographs that meticulously documented the affair. Beth tried to minimize the evidence, claiming that she had made mistakes, but had learned from them. How many mistakes? Tom pressed her. How many hotel rooms? How many secret meetings? How many lies were told to your husband and your daughters? I don't know the exact number. More than 10. More than 20. I don't know, she admitted, frustrated. But you do know that you used your family's money to pay for these mistakes. The credit cards were in my name, too. Money earned by your husband while you were planning to leave him. Beth's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge had seen the evidence, heard the admissions, and witnessed Beth's utter inability to take full responsibility for her actions. The next witness was Candace Williams. I had subpoenaed her despite her strong reluctance to testify against her friend. Mrs. Williams, Tom said, how long have you known the plaintiff? 25 years, since high school. Would you say you know her well? Very well. She's been my closest friend. Did Mrs. Morrison discuss her marital problems with you? Candace looked at Beth, who was staring at her with a mixture of betrayal and desperation. Yes, she did. What did she tell you? She said she was unhappy, that she felt trapped, that she wanted more excitement in her life. Did she mention John Morrison specifically? Another tormented glance at Beth. Yes. What did she say about him? She said he made her feel young again, made her feel desirable. Did she express any concern about the effect her actions might have on her daughters? She said the girls would understand eventually, that they'd want her to be happy. Did she discuss her pregnancy with you? Beth's lawyer objected, but Judge Harrison allowed the question. Yes, she said quietly. What did she tell you about the pregnancy? She said it was a sign that she and John were meant to be together, that it would prove to everyone that their relationship was real. Did she express any concern about raising a child with Mr. John Morrison? She said John would step up, that becoming a father would change him. Based on your knowledge of both parties, do you believe that's likely? Beth's lawyer objected again, and this time the judge sustained it, but the implication was clear. Even Beth's best friend had serious doubts about John's reliability as a partner and a potential father. The final, decisive witness was Becca. She had insisted on testifying, and I had reluctantly agreed. She looked composed and mature as she took the oath, more adult than teenager. Becca, Tom said gently, can you tell the court what your home life was like before your mother left? It was normal, I guess. Dad worked a lot, but he was always there for the important stuff. Mom traveled more for her job, but we didn't think much of it at first. When did you realize something was wrong? When Uncle John started coming around more often. He'd be there when we got home from school or when Dad was working late. It just felt weird. Weird how? Like he was trying to replace Dad. He'd help with homework or cook dinner, stuff that wasn't really his job. How did you feel when your mother left? Becca looked directly at Beth, her voice filled with deep disappointment. Confused. Hurt. Like our family didn't matter to her anymore. Do you want your mother to have custody of you and your sister? I want Mom to be part of our lives, but I want to stay with Dad. He's the one who's been taking care of us. What about your mother's relationship with your uncle? It's gross, Becca said bluntly, making no apology. He's Dad's brother. It's like she chose the worst possible person to have an affair with. Beth was openly sobbing now, but Becca continued, her voice clear. And now she's having his baby, which means our family is really broken. There's no coming back from that. Thank you, Becca. No further questions. Beth's lawyer tried to repair the damage by asking Becca about happy memories with her mother, about the importance of maintaining their relationship, but the damage was irreversible. A 17-year-old girl had just told a judge that her mother's choices were gross and had broken their family beyond any hope of repair. The closing arguments were brief. Beth's lawyer made one last, desperate plea for understanding, arguing that people make mistakes and deserve second chances. Tom Bradley summed up the evidence methodically: affair, abandonment, pregnancy, planned relocation, and financial irresponsibility. Your Honor, he concluded, the children in this case need stability, not drama. They need a parent who puts their well-being first, not someone who's still figuring out what they want from life. Judge Harrison recessed for 30 minutes to consider her decision. I sat in the hallway with Tom, watching Beth and her lawyer huddle in an urgent, whispered conversation. How do you think it went? I asked Tom. Better than I expected. Becca's testimony was particularly effective, and the pregnancy issue, that was the key. A woman pregnant with her lover's child while still married to someone else is simply not going to get primary custody of two teenagers. When we reconvened, Judge Harrison delivered her ruling with cold, professional precision. Based on the evidence presented, I find that Mrs. Morrison abandoned the family home to pursue an extramarital relationship, using marital assets to fund that relationship while neglecting her parental responsibilities. Her current living situation is unstable, and her plans for the future are uncertain. She awarded me primary physical custody of both girls. Beth would receive supervised visitation every other weekend. Beth would receive 30% of our marital assets and no spousal support, given her adultery and abandonment of the family. Furthermore, Judge Harrison continued, given Mrs. Morrison's pregnancy and her relationship with the girl's uncle, I am ordering family therapy for all parties to help navigate this unusual and destructive situation. Beth was sobbing openly now. Her lawyer put a comforting hand on her shoulder, but there was absolutely nothing more they could do. The judge's decision was thorough, final, and crushing. Outside the courthouse, Beth finally confronted me directly for the first time in weeks. Are you happy now? She demanded, her voice raw. You've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, Beth, I stated, looking straight into her tear-filled eyes. I just refuse to let you destroy our daughters' lives. Those girls need their mother. They need a mother who puts them first. When you're ready to be that person, we can talk. And what about the baby? What about John? What about them? You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. James, please. The hearing is over, Beth. The judge has spoken. It's time for all of us to move on. I walked away, leaving her standing on the courthouse steps with her lawyer. I didn't feel any satisfaction in her tears or joy in her defeat. But I did feel something else, intense relief. The uncertainty was finally over. My daughters would stay with me, in their home, with their lives intact. That evening, I made dinner for Becca and Brittany. I helped them with their homework and tucked Brittany in with a story about a princess who saved herself. It was just normal family stuff, except now it felt incredibly precious instead of routine. Becca found me in the kitchen later, cleaning up the dishes. So, we're staying, she said. We're staying for good. This is where we belong. Yes, it is. What's going to happen now with Mom and the baby and everything? I don't know, honey, but whatever happens, we'll handle it together, as a family. As a family. Later that night, I sat in my office and looked out at the town I had called home my whole life. Millbrook wasn't perfect, but it was ours. My daughters would graduate from the same high school I attended. They would grow up surrounded by people who cared about them. They would have the stability their mother had tried so carelessly to take away. Beth would have her baby with John. She would build whatever life she could with a man who had already proven his utter unreliability. Maybe they would move to Chicago or Indianapolis or Nashville. Maybe John would stick around long enough to be a father. Maybe Beth would eventually realize the magnitude of what she had lost and try to rebuild her relationship with our daughters. All of that was completely out of my control. What I could control was being the best father I could possibly be, providing the stability and love my girls desperately needed, and protecting the life we built together. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. John's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever he had to say, I didn't need to hear it. The legal battle was over. The custody issue was settled, and my family was safe. Do you think Beth was more motivated by a genuine desire for passion, or by a need to punish her husband for not being the person she wanted him to be? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments.